Free market economists went off to lucrative jobs in the city,
allowing
academic institutions and think tanks to be captured by the left.
There's a reason why she doesn't name any.
Demand management crept back in, alongside neo-Keynesian-dominated monetary policy.
She doesn't know what that means.
And we Conservatives allowed the debate to be framed and led by the left.
Never mentioned this before.
Whether it was the anti-capitalist arguments
Literally never
of the
mentioned
Occupy
it. Environment Secretary, Foreign Secretary, International Trade Secretary, Foreign Secretary, never mentioned it. Wokery. Wokery is to blame.
Statist environmental solutions.
Down with environmental
solutions. We've all got
as
to admit
a former environment
that it's the left that made the running.
The left. 13 years
and
of
we've seen
Tory
that
rule.
regardless of which government has been in power.
Go on. Go into
From the energy price cap to the 2050 climate change target to the ESG agenda in companies, there's been a cultural shift across both business and the public sector towards more left-wing policies. And despite the long record of failure of industrial policy, it's back in vogue again. People are talking about it.
I mean, where do you even start? The energy price cap was about the only thing she got right, wasn't it? And now she's decrying it. That was her own policy, the energy price cap. The think tanks have been overtaken by the left. Right. Which think tanks would those be, off the top of your head? Go on. Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? No. I've got nothing. Oh, in the media, of course. Crikey. The Daily Mail, the Daily Telegraph, the Times, the Spectator, the Sunday Times, the Sun, the Mail on Sunday, the Express, the Sunday Express. I mean, God, the bloody lefties are everywhere, aren't they? You can't swing a cat in the British media without knocking a lefty out anymore. They're all out there. You can name them all now, can't you? Go on. Anyone? I just want you to pause just for a minute, all right? And see if you can remember the figure that most experts put upon Liz Truss's premiership, the cost of Liz Truss's premiership. I think £35 billion is a cautious estimate. We may not know for sure until economic cycles are complete. Pork markets. Thank you, Ryrie. That was indeed the other thing. So you've got cheese. Importing cheese is a disgrace, and pork markets are going to save us from the economic impacts of Brexit. I told you there was a lot to get through. Focus, James. Focus. So I think 35 billion quid is a cautious estimate on what she cost the country. And the brevity of her premiership was historical. I think there was a chancellor who died in office and therefore spared Kwasi Kwarteng from being the shortest-serving chancellor of all time. I think you should actually get a free pass if you perished. I don't think you should be counted in the annals of shortest-serving chancellors or shortest-serving prime ministers if you died on the job, because that means that the cessation of your period in office was not caused by your own competence or incompetence. It was caused by your death. But I think, was Liz Truss the shortest ever? Has anyone been in the job shorter than Liz Truss? Until she came along, Ian Duncan Smith, I think, was the only Conservative leader never to lead the party into a general election. So some wonderful, wonderful company there. And in many ways, Ian Duncan Smith is emblematic of the broader problem, because treating blithering idiots as if they are valid contributors to public discourse is a large part or a large contributor to the creation of the problems we've got now. And as if to prove it, who has turned up at Liz Truss's speech this morning? Who do you think's turned up early? Here is a list courtesy of LBC's highly respected reporter, Henry Riley. It's not just me that says that, by the way. It's Surrey Heath Council as well. Nigel Farage is there. Lord Frost is there. Patrick Minford is there. Julian Jessup is there, a, quote, fellow, end quotes, of the, quote, Institute of Economic Affairs, end quotes. Sir Rocco Forte is there. He is a hotelier and staunch Brexiter, as they like to call themselves, who revealed earlier this year that he was thinking of moving to Italy because it's easier to do business there. In fact, I think the direct quote was, it will be easier to expand in Italy than it would be in the Brexit Britain that he both sought and voted for. Matthew Elliott is there, the founder of the, quote, Taxpayers Alliance, end quote, and indeed the former chief executive, I think, of, quotes, Vote Leave, end. No, that doesn't need quotes. It was just called Vote Leave. There's no irony in that particular title. It did do exactly what it said on the tin. And then there's quite an odd bloke who sells smoked salmon and ended up as a sort of bag carrier stroke butler for Nigel Farage called Lance Foreman, but you don't really need to worry about him. Out of those names, I've just noticed Nigel Farage, Lord Frost, Patrick Minford, Julian Jessup, Sir Rocco Forte and Matthew Elliott, how many of them do you think merit a whole chapter in my new book? How They Broke Britain, which is a fairly comprehensive account of precisely how we ended up with someone like Liz Truss in Downing Street, spaffing something like £35 billion up the wall as a consequence of epic incompetence, unbelievable entitlement and bogus ideology. Which of those six? They're all in it. They all get quite good mentions to varying degrees. Farage, Frost, Minford, Jessup, Forte, Elliott. Have a guess at which two get their own chapters, all right? You can text it to 84850. It's not. I haven't got enough books yet, to give a free copy to whoever gets it right. It might be really obvious, actually, looking at it, but maybe not. Anyway, that's the country we live in now. You can be proven not just spectacularly, but historically wrong about everything. In fact, Farage, Frost, Minford, Jessup, Forte, Elliott would fit fairly neatly into that category. But because you are sponsored by the most powerful engines in society, whether it's the Conservative Party or the conservative media or the very, very wealthy plutocrats who fund the secret think tanks that Matthew Elliott is such a wonderful example of, as long as you've got them on side, you can continue to argue that black is white, that up is down, and that the unicorns are going to be here by tea time. High on lettuce, perhaps. And that is extraordinary, truly extraordinary. Liz Truss is giving a speech to the Institute of Government in which she seeks to absolve herself of almost all blame for what she did. She seeks to blame everybody from the Office of Budgetary Responsibility to the BBC for her epic incompetence and gross unsuitability for office. And she seeks to... or she deigns, really, to tell Rishi Sunak what he should be doing with regard to economic policy. Just pause right there. Just pause right there. Everyone's getting it wrong. Perhaps I should give a free book. Can I get? I mean, it's not out for a while, but I'll give a book to the first person who gets it right. You're all getting it wrong. I can see why. Oh, Truss is in the book as well. So Farage, Frost, Minford, Jessup, Forte, Elliott. Which three? Leave Truss out. I've already told you she gets a chapter. 11 minutes after 10 is the time. Liz Truss is today giving a speech in a fairly august environment. The Institute for Government is not a secretly funded right-wing think tank doing the bidding of its anonymous donors while pretending to be contributing honestly to public discourse. The Institute for Government is a solid affair, and she's telling Rishi Sunak what he should be doing economically or in terms of tax cuts. There's another bit as well which is frankly astonishing. You know, we talk a lot on this programme about class. There are two things about middle-class people deigning to comment on what, quotes, working class, end quotes, people think that really boil my brains. The first is the imputation that everyone's racist. The red wall is racist. Everybody's racist. Working class values involve racism. That is absolute Horlicks. The biggest racists I know are writing for The Spectator and The Daily Telegraph. Well, rather the biggest racist I come into regular contact with via media. It's not as if I'm going to knock about with these people. It's absolute Horlicks to do that. There was a successful attempt to blame the consequences of austerity on immigration. That's largely what got Brexit over the line because, well, chiefly because David Cameron and George Osborne, while campaigning for Remain, could hardly turn around and say, no, look, the reason why your life is rubbish is because of the policies we introduced 6 years ago. So when Farage and, well, let's do the whole list, Frost and Minford and Jessup and Forte and Elliott popped up to say the reasons why your life is rubbish is because of all those French people and Polish builders, the government of the time, which was ostensibly supporting Remain, couldn't turn around and say, no, actually, it's all on us. It was our policies that robbed your communities of infrastructure. It was our policies that saw businesses fail on the ground. It was your policies that took away your library. It was our policies that took away your Sure Start. Nothing to do with EU membership, but there we go. And now she's standing up at the Institute for Government giving a speech on what she got right and why everyone else is wrong and why the BBC is to blame. And then we get to the working class point, which the second thing about the middle class people commenting on working class people that really boils my brains is this sort of idea that they know what the values are. So on the one hand, you have racism, and on the other hand, you have this. Well, here you go. So in this new book by the political editor of The Telegraph, she is quoted as saying, "Who's paying their effing wages? It's plumbers in Dartford that are paying their wages. You know, the ceramics workers in Stoke-on-Trent." I mean, that was certainly a valid point in the 19th century, maybe for much of the 20th. But the ceramics workers in Stoke-on-Trent as representatives of the great British working class, it gets better. The bridge builders. The bridge builders. These are the people paying their wages. The IMF, Labour, the Treasury officials, the BBC, have they ever seen a tax rise they don't like? And ironically, I think it was one of the weird new TV channels, possibly GBB's, when Liz Truss was asked to comment on something pretty egregious that they'd done. She said, "I don't think politicians should ever criticise journalists." That's because she's a fraudulent liar. She's quite happy to criticise the BBC, as am I, but I would never sit here and say to you, I don't think we should ever, I don't think politicians should ever I don't think radio presenters should ever criticise other journalists. That's quite a charge. And then turn around and criticise other journalists. 10:15 is the time. We still haven't got a question. No one's got it right. That's really, really surprising. It's not Minford and Frost. It's not Farage and Frost. It's quite incredible. I'm slightly worried now that I might have encouraged you to turn me off and put Liz Truss on just to have it, but you'd probably get more laughs, wouldn't you, in the course of the... So we'll pick over the bones of the speech. Henry Riley's there, bless him. What I want to do is a step back question today. I get out of the weeds, get out of the detail, focus upon this central point. The most catastrophic Prime Minister in the history of these islands is, about a year after running out of Downing Street with her pants on fire and having set fire, indeed, to the British economy, is standing up in public, speaking as if she is more sinned against than sinning, attended upon by various half-wits and sociopaths, and expressing a truly held belief that she was right and everybody who pointed out how stupid she was wrong. And it is being reported, it is being broadcast live on news channels, it is being talked about on the biggest show in town. This one, yeah. And I want you to pause for a moment and just tell me why. How? There's two elements to this. There's the systemic answer. How have we ended up living in a system where someone who set fire to the economy can, within a year, turn up expecting respect and expecting reverence to tell everybody why the evidence of their own eyes and ears should be completely ignored and you should just listen to her because she'll tell you the truth. So the systemic answer to the question of how has this happened? How have we ended up in a place where you can still... merit respect, if you like, or still merit an audience despite having been so catastrophically awful? And the second question is possibly more interesting, but also more nebulous. What's going on in her head? 0345 6060 973. If you had done what Truss has done, I don't think you would ever show your face in public again. I truly don't. It is as if you'd spent your whole life dreaming of being a football player and you got a run out in the last 10 minutes of the FA Cup final and it was 0-0 with moments to go and the ball, the goalkeeper fell over his own shoelaces. You somehow ended up with the ball 5 inches from the goal line. All you had to do was stroke it over the line, but you contrived somehow to trip over it and break your nose. And you would want to hide for the rest of your life, right? I don't know what you do for a living. Imagine messing up on a scale so egregiously awful that you would not want anybody ever to remember your name or indeed remember your face. That, I think, is a normal reaction to failure on that scale, that unprecedented, historic scale, an unbelievable level of incompetence and catastrophe. And Liz Truss today is exonerating herself, blaming everything from the moonlight to the sunshine, never mind the boogie, and deigning, this is the bit I find astonishing, deigning to pronounce on what the current and future prime ministers should be doing. So the systemic answer to the question is perhaps the more substantive one. How have we ended up in this place? But the more interesting question perhaps, how or what is going on in Liz Truss's head today? 0345 6060 973. Off the top of my head, it's like Brian Clough giving a speech on how brilliant things went at Leeds United. That might be a tiny bit niche. It's like Gerald Ratner giving a speech on how he is a superb business leader that got everything right during his time at the helm of the family firm. It's like, I can't do any of those because they're a little bit ripe, but you're just someone who is a byword for failure, trying to sort of recast themselves as a motivational speaker. What, and this is the question I want you to answer first, what is going on in Liz Truss's head?